Yo, what's going on, guys? It's Houston Sports Talk back another video day, and today we're going to be recapping day 3 of Houston Texans training camp. Houston Texans practicing on a Saturday. Honestly, I didn't think the Texans were going to have practice on Saturday. And the ultimate reason I thought they wouldn't have practice today on Saturday was because I remember last year during training camp, I'm not saying that it's going to be like that every year, but I remember last year, I'm pretty sure the Texans started off their training camp last year, Thursday, Friday, day 1, day 2, and then I believe they took Saturday off. I believe that's the way it started off last year. I know that they had the first Saturday off in training camp to start off last year. So in my brain, I was kind of thinking it was going to start off like that as well, but I guess I was wrong. So yeah, it was a good day at camp. Now I'm going to go over some things no fans at these practices so far. Tuesday is the day that we will see fans have access to the practices and scrimmages, and that'll be interesting. I don't think I'm going to be going on Tuesday, but there are going to be many other practices and scrimmages that we're going to see fans have access to. So I'm going to at least try to go to 1 or 2 of those. So I'm excited to potentially go there and be with other Texans fans and watch this team practice. But I don't think that will be Tuesday. But I am planning on going potentially 1 or 2 practices. We will see what happens. But I want to go over what happened in this practice. Even though there are no fans, media has access, and they have been taking video. There's some of these guys we're so lucky to have to post videos and give notice of what's going on. I'm going to go over quickly going to go over some of these guys, and when I talk about what's happened, I will give them a shout out. But some of these guys: Cody Stutes, Aaron Wilson, Will Kunkel, Chancellor Johnson. There are a couple other guys that have been doing a great job keeping Texans fans updated. Landry Locker is another one, keeping Texans fans updated throughout the first 3 days of training camp. So let's get into what happened. First, let's start off with an update from Cody Stutes. Joe Mixon was got a vet day, so no Joe Mixon at camp today, and still no Laramie Tunsil or Christian Harris. Neither one of Tunsil or Christian Harris practice on day 1 or day 2. Remains that way day 3. Now, Cody posted it was a minute and a half video, maybe a little bit over a minute and a half, of quarterbacks throwing passes to wide receivers and tight ends. It was a full run through the rotation, and we got to witness all 4 quarterbacks, C.J. Stroud, Davis Mills, Case Keenum, and Tim Boyle, throw passes to every single wide receiver and tight end on this roster that were available. And I'm going to go over who we witnessed, throw the ball, to who. So this is in order of how it happened. CJ Stroud, this is how it started off, and I'm going to go over the whole list and, who threw to who. CJ threw, and these are slant passes and out routes. So these are slants and out routes. And CJ threw to John Mechie. Davis Mills threw to Ben Skronik. CJ Stroud threw to Stephon Diggs. Case Keenum threw to Johnny Johnson III. Davis Mills threw to Robert Woods. CJ Stroud threw to Nico Collins and Noah Brown. Davis Mills threw to Xavier Hutchinson. Case Keenum threw to Steven Sims. Tim Boyle threw to both of the twins, Jaden and Jackson Jenke. Stroud threw to Tank Dell. And then the tight ends. Now, the tight ends, Case Keenum did not throw to any tight ends, but that was just Davis, Stroud, and Tim. So Stroud threw, of course, to Dalton Schultz. Mills threw to Tegan Quantanaro. Stroud threw to Brevin Jordan. Mills threw to Troy Harrison, who's a fullback, but he's a tight end and a fullback. This was also for fullbacks. No Andrew Beck because he was not available at practice today. Tim Boyle threw to rookie Cade Stover, and Mills threw to Dalton Keene, who had a solid year last year from the Patriots. So that's who was thrown to who in the full run through the rotation. And yeah, it's pretty interesting. So that's where I guess you have in the depth chart. If you look at the wide receiver position, I think it's kind of interesting because Stroud's throwing, of course, to Diggs and Dell and to Diggs, Dell, and Nico Collins, and of course he's throwing to Noah Brown as well, and he's throwing to John Mechie. But then we have guys who are like Robert Woods and Ben Skronik. Who else am I missing? Xavier Hutchinson are getting reps with Davis Mills. Now, I think John Mechie have been he's been doing reps with both Davis Mills and CJ Stroud. But so that was an interesting video posted by Cody Stutes. And so another tweet by Cody Stutes. This wasn't a video. This was just letting Texans fans know what happened. And I think a couple other guys posted about this, but the biggest play of the day was it's funny enough, back to John Mechie, who had a great day at camp, and he's been impressing this Texans team early on in camp. Best play of the day, best play of all 3 days so far, longest play. Davis Mills throws a 50-plus yard play. It was a 50-plus yard play. It wasn't a 50-plus yard throw, but it was a 50-yard-plus play for a touchdown to John Mechie. It was a post route, and so what he tweeted is Davis Mills to John Mechie for a huge play, a little better throw, and he's running for the touchdown. Mike Ford couldn't keep up with John Mechie, so cornerback Mike Ford, who the Texans signed from Cleveland, was guarding John Mechie. John Mechie was able to get by him, and it was the longest play of training camp so far. And also, Cody Stutes, how about this? I mean, he was covering even punts. I mean, he was talking about how good Tommy Townsend, who the Texans picked up from Kansas City, has been, having a strong camp so far with his punting, which that's some huge Texans knowledge right there, or huge Texans coverage right there, covering it all. Now I want to get to Aaron Wilson. Aaron Wilson reported that the Houston Texans had their first interception of training camp. How about Eric Murray with the first interception of training camp? This was a C.J. Stroud pass thrown to Tank Dell, and Eric Murray came up with the football. I really didn't think Eric Murray would be the first interception of training camp. I remember last year Steven Nelson had the first interception of training camp. He had a couple. He was going crazy last year in training camp with interceptions. And there are some Texans that are really impressing the organization. I know John Mechie has been a guy who's they've been really impressed, in what he's been doing. I know John Mechie and Davis Mills are two guys. John Mechie and Damian Pierce are two guys offensively who have been putting on a show early on in training camp and doing a good job and have impressed the Texans. And I think you can look defensively. Jalen Petrie is a guy who the Texans have been really impressed with early on in training camp. I know another guy offensively the Texans are really impressed with and has had some really good accuracy early on in camp and has looked good as Davis Mills, third-year quarterback. And I really like what I've seen from Davis Mills so far. He looks good. Look, last year at camp he looked good. Let's not look. It was a good competition last year between C.J. Stroud and Davis Mills. Let's not act like Davis Mills put up a good fight in that QB competition last year with C.J. Stroud. I mean, honestly, the only reason why Davis Mills was great in camp last year. If you guys remember, Davis Mills was great in camp. C.J. Stroud just put on a show. I think that Davis Mills, if Stroud wasn't great in camp, Davis Mills probably would have been week one starter, in my opinion, because Davis Mills was really good in training camp. C.J. Stroud was just better. C.J. Stroud put on a show in training camp. Now, since Stroud was putting on a show, it's kind of like under the radar that Davis Mills was actually having a good camp last year. But since there was a better quarterback doing a good job than Davis, doing a better job than Davis, I don't think that's really talked about a lot. But Davis did a good job in training camp. He even looked pretty good in preseason. And then we saw him against the Cleveland Browns in that home game against the Browns on Christmas Eve. He came in for Case Keenum and led 2 touchdown drives through 2 touchdown passes. So I really like what I've seen from Davis in training camp so far, and I have a little bit of a hot take. I'm not suggesting Davis to be the starting quarterback, but if God forbid, and I know we've seen it happen, God forbid if anything happens to CJ Stroud, I don't want to see it. It's my worst nightmare for this Houston Texans team. That is the worst nightmare. That's a 5-star nightmare right there. God forbid anything happens to CJ Stroud. We saw, him get a concussion last year. It caused him to miss 2 games. And the Texans went to the route of starting Case Keenum. And I wanted to talk about this. It's a little random. But if CJ Stroud were to get injured, or something happens, he has to miss a game or 2, I really would love to see the Texans start Davis Mills instead of Case Keenum. I like Case. He's a great dude. He's very experienced and a good veteran who's not a bad quarterback. But I think Davis Mills, you put him with this offense, and compared to Case Keenum, I think Davis Mills is going to be, he's going to be solid. He's not going to be anywhere near CJ Stroud. But honestly, I like Case Keenum, but I think Davis Mills is miles better than him. And I think Davis Mills showed that in the Cleveland game without CJ Stroud. I think he showed some really good things in training camp and preseason as well. So if they need one of those guys in Davis Mills or Case Keenum to step up again like they did last season for 2 games against Tennessee and Cleveland, I would really love for Davis Mills to be that guy. He's a little bit more developed than he was. And actually, this is my mistake. I said Davis Mills is going in his 3rd season. He's going into his 4th season, so that's my mistake. But Davis Mills is a guy I believe in the last 2 years. I think he's a little bit more developed. He's definitely gone through a better coaching staff than he was on in his first 2 seasons. If you look at the last 2 years, I think he's on a way better staff, and he has a lot better he has a lot better offensive weapons. I mean, look at what the Texans added in last offseason. Last offseason, the Texans added in Tank Dell and Noah Brown and Robert Woods. Then this offseason, they added Joe Mixon. Also last offseason, they added in Dalton Schultz. This offseason, they added in Joe Mixon, Stephon Diggs, tight end Cade Stover. Who else am I missing? Ben Skronik, healthy John Mechie. This offense in the last 2 years, both last 2 years since Davis was the starter last, has gotten better significantly both seasons, going into last season and going into this season. So I think from what we've seen from Davis Mills so far, I think he could be really good with this offense. So God forbid anything happens to CJ and the Texans, how we saw them trying to make the decision, who's going to be the starter? Is it going to be Davis? Is it going to be Case Keenum? And they went to Case, and going into a road game against a weak defense, Case Keenum was able to get the job done. That wasn't a strong game by Case Keenum against Tennessee. It really wasn't. The run game was dominant in that game. The defense was great in that overtime win against Tennessee. The defense was great, and Devin Singletary was great. And Dalton Schultz made a couple catches, wasn't even that great of throws by Case Keenum. And then, he goes, the next week he goes up and faces a Cleveland Browns defense, and he's absolutely terrible. And they bring in Davis Mills, and he's playing good. So it's weird because last year kind of felt like Davis Mills was the backup to C.J. Stroud because he was. But when C.J. Stroud goes down and we have someone start for him, it's kind of interesting that guy to start as Case Keenum. So if that were to happen again, I think Davis 100% sure should be the starter for the Houston Texans. And I think he could do a solid job. And I'm really looking forward to see what Davis Mills can do in the rest of training camp and preseason, because if Davis Mills can get to have a great preseason, if he puts on a show in the preseason, and let's say I think there's a decent chance the Texans could be dominant this season to the point where going into Week 18, the Texans have already locked up the division, really don't have anything to play for. I think you could see this Texans team as such a good team this upcoming season that they might be able to have the luxury to, to rest their starters on Week 18 And that could be I think week 18 could be a potential start for Mills if the Texans have already locked up the division and don't have anything to play for. You could see Davis Mills start on week 18. We'll see how the Texans do throughout the season. But yeah, I've been really impressed with Davis Mills throughout training camp. I've been really impressed mainly with the guy he threw the ball to, John Mechie. He's been absolutely outstanding. Jalen Petrie has been great. Stephon Diggs has been great as well. It's not a lot going on. These guys aren't really playing full contact scrimmage so far, but early on with not a lot going on, things have been good for Stroud and Mills and Diggs and Mechie and Petrie and Damian Pierce. So I love what I'm seeing from this team, and I love the vibe as well. Let me know your thoughts on day 3 of training camp in the comment section, and peace out. Go Texans.